Hi everybody and welcome to Different Leaf, a show for new and experienced cannabis consumers. I'm Brit Smith. As social beings, us humans love nothing more than to get together around some really good food. We'll have a little drink, maybe a little smoke, relax, connect, and enjoy the flavors of the night. That's why cannabis-infused dinner clubs have been getting so popular in recent years. It's the perfect way to connect over cannabinoids and cuisine. Now, these kinds of dinners may be nothing new. Infused dining with friends has probably stretched back thousands of years in cultures all over the world. And of course, cannabis chefs in the US have been holding speakeasy-style dinners for years. But recently, thanks to state-by-state legalization, those chefs have been able to come above ground, and now they're spoiling more and more of us with pot-laden, multi-course fine dining experiences. There are a few different ways we can try these supper clubs. Some cannabis chefs and their teams will host evening meals for dozens of folks, both longtime cannabis lovers and curious consumers alike. Whoever buys a ticket gets a place at the table where they can get their buzz on slowly with their friends and meet new friends-to-be. And it's a really social thing. It's about the food, the weed, and the community. I went to one recently in Boston, and it was one of the coolest parties I'd been to in a long time. Then there are chefs like Chef Hawaii Mike Salman in Brooklyn, New York, who you can hire to design a high-end, curated infused menu and host a private supper club evening just for you and your people. And with Chef Hawaii Mike, the focus in the kitchen is really on cannabis as an ingredient that can enhance your experience of the fine food they serve and the fine company you keep. Chef Hawaii Mike is the founder of Chef for Hire, and he and his crew have been holding infused supper club events in New York since well before the state legalized. Of course, being in the cannabis community for that long, word got around on the underground about just how good both their food and the experiences had been, and Chef for Hire's dope dinners had been in high demand ever since. We're going to chat today with Chef Hawaii Mike about how legalization has affected their dinners, how they design their menus and pick the dosages of THC and CBD, and how they're melding the feelings of celebration, tradition, and community all with the cannabis plant. If you have the latest cultural spring issue of Different Leaf the magazine, flip to page 54 where you can read up on Chef Hawaii Mike and see how he and his team work in the kitchen. If you don't have your copy yet, just head on over to differentleaf.com to order your issue, or find the subscribe and shop tab to find your local in-person retailer. And we'll be right back to chat about cannabis-infused social dining experiences with Chef Hawaii Mike Salman. Mike, it's a pleasure to meet you. I want to kick it off by getting to know you a little bit. Why Hawaii, Mike? You're in New York. Are you from Hawaii? Is it the same reason they call me Brit?
So originally, I was born in San Francisco, and then my mom took me to Hawaii when I was 5, and I did grade school out there. I got to New York selling weed, and I worked in the music industry. There wasn't a lot of people that were in the music industry and hip-hop that wore like Hawaiian shirts, sold weed, and lived in Hawaii. So I became Hawaii Mike, affectionately. And it's kind of just stuck with me since and become my brand.
That's awesome. So what's your background as a chef then?
So interestingly enough, I've actually never cooked in a kitchen. My first job was actually a prep cook, but that was probably only because my father's wife was the executive chef and I needed a new job. So I ended up in the kitchen. But I did learn a lot, like the claw, like that's, cutting and, understanding prep and how to use a knife and move around in the kitchen, something that stuck with me. And I've loved cooking since I was a kid. I started cooking for myself at 9, but never worked professionally in the kitchen until I started doing Chef for Hire.
Wow. And so you started doing Chef for Hire in 2015, is that right?
So 2015 was our first supper club. So we launched a series of supper clubs. It was monthly. I mean, we did that for 56 months up until March 14th, 2020, when we had this little obstacle called the lockdown that turned into the pandemic. But we started Chef for Hire probably 2014 and the 13-ish, but officially as this supper club and, doing products and things like that. It was around that.
So, how did you get introduced to infusing food and sort of setting up these big meals?
Well, I had been doing that since I was a kid, right? Just messing around. I'd
Yeah.
infuse omelets, I'd infuse butter, and I was doing it super archaic. I'm definitely not trying to say I was sophisticated back then. It was literally like, throwing bud in with butter and like, you add more butter, the blood's burning. Like, it definitely wasn't the best way. You were losing so much.
Yeah.
But I actually met a woman by the name of Alexis Garrison, who is actually a cannabis chef now as well. She's originally from Seattle or Washington. And we got started a company called Epic Moment. And I was doing more of the marketing. And long story short, we didn't work out at the moment. And I just started cooking myself and I figured it out. And I started with more confections, like really learning how to make shelf-stable products. And then at the same time, I would just mess around in the kitchen with my friends because we had already been doing it. And it just turned into a thing where we wanted to introduce our products to our friends, our community, and people around us. And we decided to do like a kind of like a quote unquote Tupperware party with food.
That's cool.
So we did a Tupperware style party where we did food and we did a break and then a live presentation. And then that became like the real start of our supper clubs. And to date, we've done over 200 plus infused dining experiences. 50, actually not 60 plus. We just did a brunch yesterday, but we've done like guests from like 2 to 200 plus catered events. And in the beginning, the hardest part was figuring out and dialing in the dosage, like really getting that to a point where we're not laying people out. And especially when you're talking about, one, doing it for a lot of different people, but two, doing it for people who have different tolerances, and then on top of that, different egos. Like dealing with people's egos is tough. It could be both ways, right? There's a person we always think of, right? Nah, I could do whatever. But it's the other person who's kind of also scared, right? Like their ego is like, nah, that shit's been happening. I'm gonna protect you. And it's finding like, how do we create a harmonious balance between everybody in this? Because everything we do is energy, right? And if the main energy is what kind of creates the experience. And so I want the main energy to be trust and curiosity and having fun, not fear, not worry, not concern. So for me, it's really balancing all of those things has been the biggest,
So you've really seen the dinner club scene change a lot over the last like 7 or 8 years. Let's talk a little bit about food culture in general, cannabis culture in general. Both of them are really social, right? Like we eat together. A lot of the time we'll smoke together or enjoy cannabis together. So it makes total sense that we try and have infused food together. But sitting down for these multi-course infused dinners together, up until lately, that's been a pretty underground thing. I'd definitely heard of it on the legacy market. People were holding infused dinners because if you're a chef and you appreciate weed, it's going to be something that you want to do for your friends, right? So when you have people coming to you, they have to trust you, like you said. But it used to be sort of underground, like speakeasies, and now you're doing like hundreds and hundreds of people. How has the legalization affected the way that cannabis dinners are run?
I think the only way to meet the legalization has affected these experiences is that now there's more of them, right? As the laws kind of tend to open up, more people are like, oh, I'll hop in there. You're starting to hear more restaurants. So I think legalization is really just going to kind of open it up more. And the further we go down with it, it's just so strange talking about this because like, I'm sure there was a time before this where people were doing dinner parties. People were experimenting because we are social beings. And if this plant has been around since before us, then how could we not have experimented with it in different cultures and places, right? I truly believe back in the day in India, they were doing this for sure. China, for sure. And then even more modern times with Hunter S. Thompson, right? And people of that nature hosting dinner parties around this. So I like to say that, yes, while we pioneered the newer forms of this in the past 10 years that we've been doing this, if without paying homage to whatever came before us, like, I'd be remiss to not look at that, and not say like, because to me, nothing's new under the sun. Right. Nothing. It's just new players, new people, and sometimes new machinery or techniques and tools that we may have and new learnings from the past. But nothing's new. right? We just got a new opportunity to do something different with it, flip it just a little bit and just
Yeah.
have some fun. So that's all we're here doing.
When it comes to picking the kinds of food that you'll be putting on the menu for your dinners and the kinds of foods, like the recipes that you're putting together, like we've said, cannabis is different all around the world. Food is different all around the world. So I guess when I ask, well, what does cannabis cuisine look like to you? What I'm really asking is, what does cannabis cuisine look like in New York City at the moment? Like, what do you serve? What are people enjoying? And where do you source all of that food and cannabis from?
So as far as our meals, like the food that we'll serve varies depending upon the theme. So every time we do one of our supper clubs flights, we call them flights because like we talked about before, it's the trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we use the analogy of being on an airplane. Most of us get on an airplane with a pilot that we've never met before, right? That person's going to take us 37,000 feet in the air. What? I don't know how to do that shit. And then they're going to land you safely into your destination with the other, 100 plus, 200 plus passengers along with you. So I'm looking to get that same trust when I take you. So I'm your captain, Hawaii Mike.
You're the
Welcome to Flight
captain.
226, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday our destination was the South. We did a Southern brunch. And so we explored what a menu like that would look like. So we did some fried pickles with a nice red pepper remoulade. We did an Arnold Palmer with all fresh squeezed lemon and cold brewed tea. And then we did some shrimp and grits with a nice cheddar crisp. And then we did a nice salad, more seasonal salad. So we had some honey crisps in there. We had some pepitas. We did a maple syrup vin, right? So more timely with the season, the cold plus, southern, we're going to get down to some maple syrup down the line. And then we got some collard greens and some kale as the green.
For me, wherever I've moved around the US, like the local cuisine has influenced my taste going forward. Have you picked that up as you've moved around the US? Does that influence what you make now? Like, is that where you got the Southern from?
So the Southern was just, man, where did the Southern theme come from? I forgot off of this top, but there was actually a chef that I wanted to work with and bring into the kitchen with us. And they had been talking about cooking some shrimp and grits. And so I think I kind of built the menu again around that and just went with some of our favorites. Plus I'm in a location that I'm looking at taking back over. And so it's like, I use intentions, I use things that hopefully connect us, right? Because emotions are things that are very strong with a lot of us. And I think there's a lot of places where we can relate to similar emotions from similar experiences in our past. And like you said, everybody eats, right? So food is a great language to use.
Mm-hmm.
I can get to people through shrimp cooked a various way because I know a lot of people experience them that way. But then we add on different techniques, flavor profiles, and then also try to shop seasonally as best we can, right? And so that's where, having the dark leafy greens and things of that nature into the salad instead of just cooking them down shows people a different way to kind of utilize them, add some nice sweet, crisp, sour with the Honeycrisp apple, plus the maple vin, right? So again, seasonal, because we're not taught to shop seasonal. We're taught to shop with our eyes, the way things look.
Yeah.
Right. And in the US, it's like things are so cosmetically driven that if you see an oblong shaped watermelon, you're probably like, oh, that's not good. But that oblong shaped watermelon has probably actually matured enough to where it has seeds and it's actually a real watermelon. And it's probably, the flesh probably tastes a lot different and better than what you get in those seedless watermelons because they're still babies.
So is that what it is? They're just still babies. That's why they got no seeds.
That plus they've been a little bit modified, right, to seed later. So it's a lot that goes into our food. Again, it's so cosmetic.
Gosh. Yes, I'm just learning, like being in different parts of the US, I'm learning that in some parts of the US, you can enjoy berries all year round and avocados all year round. And in other parts of the US, don't even bother because it just tastes like you're eating water, essentially.
Well, but they're going to be imported, right? Or they're going to be GMO, right?
Yeah.
And just grown constantly when they shouldn't be grown. But the other part is just because we like it and we want it and they say it's healthy for us, the most healthy things are the things that grow around where we live in the seasons. Those are the things we're supposed to be eating. Just like when you have allergies, things like honey, local honey can help, right? Because a lot of those allergies are in the air and things that are being pollinated, the bees pollinating the flowers and taking out the honey, get a lot of the local things that are in the air into that honey. that helps people with their allergies or even sometimes asthma.
Yeah. Sorry, that's my dog in the background barking. She obviously wants to join us. She's doing it
So,
again.
yeah, we're trying to get a third guest. It's, it's.
I might just bring her in here. So let me ask you, when you're thinking about cannabis, is it essentially just like another one of those ingredients, something you want that's local, something that's seasonal, you want something fresh? It's like another plant to you. Do you think about it that way?
So I look at cannabis as an ingredient, right? Especially when we cook in our recipes. I want it to be something that's incorporated into the dish as organically as possible.
Yeah.
Right. I don't like it when it's just thrown on top and it's like, oh, this is infused. How much do you want? Hey, I have some tincture here and I'm just going to drop it on top. And that's no shots at anybody or anything, right? At how people do things, because you can still enjoy it. It's just my preference to cook with it. Mm-hmm. Right. Because our mission is to normalize the use of cannabinoids. And I don't think it's normal that I'm just out and I'm just dropping shit on top. Now, that's how I say, oh, shit. Like my mom used to take spirulina and put that on top of everything she ate before she ate it to help break it down. All this, again, everybody has their approach. And that's the beauty in this, right? Every single human being or mammal with a vertebrate has an endocannabinoid system. We got 9 billion plus opportunities to have a customer, or have somebody join our community. That's great odds. It also, with that lessens the thought of competition or scarcity or anything of that nature. If you do something and people relate to it and are connected to it and it's good, you're going to have customers and people interested in your products and what you do. So I think that there's so many different ways to approach this, so many ways that we can participate with the plant and consume it. So I say everybody should have their own approach to it. And how do you incorporate this plant into your lifestyle? And for us, it's food. And I'm like smoking and other things, but I just think food is going to be a huge way of consuming cannabis in the future. Because if we think about it just as part of our lifestyle, we eat every single day, multiple times every day. And like you said before, we used to smoke and go eat, or we eat and go smoke. Why not do it at the same time? Right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. A lot of business deals are done over dinners, like a lot of catching up with friends, you hang out. And for me, I try not to drink alcohol. So I think another way that you can enjoy that sort of relaxing intoxication together is if you're both open to eating THC or maybe CBD or maybe a mix. But like that's that thing about sitting down, having a drink with a friend and catching up over some food with them, right? Like I feel like wherever you get your intoxication from, it's the fact that you're both enjoying the substance together. You're both getting a little bit intoxicated together at the same sort of speed, and you match each other's energy. And if you're not a drinker, edible cannabis is a great alternative to get that intoxicating, relaxing effect. So I'm really into the idea of not just sprinkling it on top of my pizza, but, eventually one day we'll be able to go to restaurants where you can pick your milligram amounts and you can pick the flower strain that you want infused into your sauces. And it's going to be huge. And I think that these underground supper club dinners that you do, it's like the very beginning of that.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of people come to you for these dinners? How are they all socializing together?
So the foundation of how we gather people is family supper, right? So it's like the idea of bringing my favorite relatives together and what that feeling would be for me and the foods we would eat. And, so it's rooted in celebration. It's steeped in tradition. It's something that we want people to relate to. And that's why we approach with comfort foods. So the people at the table, when we get there, they can be strangers and leave best friends. And it doesn't really matter where you come from. I try to make everybody as comfortable as possible. That's the one differentiation, I think, between the analogy of aviation and being on a flight is that when you get on the airplane, you're not really like encouraged to socialize with the people next to you. It's really leave people alone, give them their space. This is really like, yo, how did you get to the table? Like, what's good? Like, and I ask who's been here before and, this is your first experience. And we usually have people that have been before, some of our members, and they can always be some of the people you can talk to and ask questions, if you're curious about what the experience holds. So it's really like, it's family. I always say, like, once you make it to our table, you're family.
Yeah, I love that. I love that gathering together. So what you do is really social dining. There's multiple courses, usually themed. It's all infused. How do you keep that steady buzz going? Do you start with a certain amount of THC and then sort of ease out with the CBD?
So for us, it's like taking off on an airplane. You're in first class, you usually get that cocktail before you take off, get a nice little buzz. So, we'll have an amuse bouche come around or a drink prior. But I set the table by doing a toast, right? So we bring the energy, we center the energy through a toast, through acknowledgement of everybody being there. And then as far as the dosage, and one thing I want people to really understand, like I've done this a lot, and I want to say in the beginning, 100%, just like you're learning, you're going to do too much, you're going to do too little. We've had it to a point where people are way too high, right? But I've dialed this in to a place where I truly believe that I can have that person who takes a lot of edibles and smokes every day, and that person who never, ever, ever tried this before, and do the same amount of dosage, and they're both going to be fine, right? Like that person that has a high tolerance, you can be like, sure, I could take a lot more, but I still feel it. I'm still good. I'm still here. That other person's like, I'm actually fucking high, but I'm not like what I thought it was going to be, where I'm out of my mind and oh my God. And I really want, like, that's my biggest thing. The idea that people have like just burned into their minds that they're going to be too high, and it's just there because this one time back in school with this brownie or this cookie that somebody didn't tell me about. This is a much different experience. So it's multiple courses, right? You're not getting the dosage in one thing. It's not a small little piece of candy or sugar, right? You have a lot of food, and it's got to go through your digestive process. And what we have to be careful on our side is that digestive process takes it from Delta 9 to Delta 11. Right? It makes it stronger once it passes through your liver. So we have to take all of these things into account. And then you're thinking about the timing in between each course. You're thinking about how many courses. You're thinking about the fats in it. You're thinking about the terpenes in the food. You're thinking about, right, all of these different elements. But what I found is really my intentions that really move the experience. How we lay this out, why we do this, how we do it, and what we kind of provide throughout the service is what really separates, I believe, our experience from that, oh my God, I'm too high and I'm going to be in a bad place. We want to entertain you by creating an incredible experience. We want to educate you by showing you have a symbiotic relationship with this plant. This plant can do wonders for us in so many different ways. And then through that information, through this experience, I want you to leave feeling empowered, right? And that's how our pillars became entertain, educate, empower. Because again, I'm talking to a lot of the people in the beginning were my friends and still are my friends. And, I come from the music industry. I come from the media industry. I come from the agency industry and marketing and management. I've had my hands in a lot of different places. So the range of people that ends up at my table is wide and very influential a lot of the times. And if I can educate them and these influential people go out and talk about what we do and say that, hopefully they're educating other people and giving them at least enough to be curious, right? To want to learn more. And for me, that's how we build community, right? Like that's how we really build this and help to show people. Because again, there's so much just negative stigma around what this plant really is. Like I don't even use the M word. Like that's how serious I take it.
You don't even say it. What?
Nah.
I'm not going to say it. If you're not going to say it, I'm not going to be the one.
I only use it in the context of explaining why I don't, right?
Yeah.
And so again, because even when people would say something like medical marijuana, I used to cringe because marijuana is not, it's cannabis. Yeah. Marijuana is a slang term. And I'm not saying it's a bad term, but it's a slang term. And there's no other medicine I know that you could get a prescription of that uses a slang terminology, right?
That's a very good point. So you're trying to build community around the cannabis plant.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Again, we have a symbiotic relation. We have an endocannabinoid system. We have a system of receptors that processes the cannabinoids found in the plant to benefit our bodies, right? It affects every single one of our motor skills and our motor functions in our body. It affects our immune system. It affects every other system in our body. Even if we never, ever, 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 ever smoke or want to, wouldn't you still want to know about this system in my body that can change how I feel and just change the I mean, man, so many different things, right? From pain to sleep to appetite to, and we're talking about food, right? It can help stimulate my
Yeah.
appetite. So there's so many just different things. Again, that's why if you ever come to our dinners, there's no cannabis leaves on the table. There's no can of this or pot that or anything.
It's just another ingredient, a piece of the
It's
dinner.
just another ingredient.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to normalize it because the other part is like people will tell me, oh my God, edibles, like I can't control that. I can control my experience on edibles and have a much more even experience than I can smoking.
I find the same way too. I feel like you sort of have a gentler come up and a gentler come down on the other side. Like it doesn't hit you as quickly and as hard, I think, as smoking it does. But then
Nope.
it's much more physical than smoking is. So you feel it more in your body. Does that sort of drive, like what strains you might be cooking with, or do you use like THC powders?
Well, we make our own products, right? And for the most part, what I've had access to in the best qualities has always been extracts, right? So we mostly use distillate, which ends up becoming just pure THC. And the other thing that I found is because I'm trying to educate people, it's easier to have a more leveled experience using a more isolated just THC compound versus a full spectrum. Because that full spectrum is going to affect people in a much different way. And again, I want to just regulate the experience as best I can. Now, when we have private events and private functions, any requests, any type of materials we want to use, 1,000%. And then we go in, right? And then try to figure out, what makes the most sense with what we have access to. I actually just had a call earlier today with a cultivator that has a new extraction process with an incredible bioavailability and kind of like a nanotechnology, but it's still full spectrum and it's still like, I'm super curious, how do we get into that? And now it's like the conversations become, well, could we grow a strain specific for you and then you use that extract for these purposes, and we just keep going down those lines. And then that's when it becomes, incredible, because there's no real limitation to the creativity you can have around this plant.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like you've got a pantry full of different terpenes and flavonoids and cannabinoids, and like how do you know what you want to pick to go with what? Like sometimes it smells citrusy and that might go really well with fish, or but like I guess when you have that isolate, you know that what you're really using it for is the euphoric experience that you're trying to help people get, and you're in there doing that food science to make it just so that it's not too high, it's not like you can't feel anything at all, so it's that real social experience. I really like that.
Let's get them in the door, right? Like think about how many people, and it's not to say by any means that I only speak to people on the fringe, but think about how many people are on that space, right? That are kind of looking over the fence of cannabis. They were either told their whole life, this thing is bad. I might've smoked in college, but then my job said this, or, I'm a parent, or right, all these other things. And then they're like, well, shit, I'm not trying to go out there and dab. Like, I'm not trying to get a blowtorch and a rig and be out here dabbing, know? So how do you let them come in? And now it's all right, well, food. And just get them in the door to explore, and then allow them to go down the rabbit hole and find the things that work best for them. Because I truly also believe, just like food, our palates are all different, right? We taste and experience food different. Same with our high. Anything that has a either aphrodisiac or psychoactive effect, they all affect us differently. We could all eat the same thing, smoke the same thing, and feel different, right? So it's really up to us to have that experience. So for me, like I said, I want to get them in the door and open them up to the world, let them go explore the world.
Yeah. I like the idea of coming together and doing it. So like if you've got a kind of curious friend, maybe a dinner would be a nice way to introduce them to something.
Yeah.
Speaking of events, you said that you've just done the Southern Sunday brunch. Do you have anything else that's coming up?
The majority of the stuff that we do is private hire flights. So it's like people just hire us to do events. I'm gonna have something this Saturday, but those are all private things that we don't really put out there a lot.
Right.
But that's the biggest thing.
So people can hire you for private events.
Oh yeah, we travel all over the world. Yeah, wherever you guys want us to cook, wherever you are. Yeah, slide in our DM, say hello. Yeah, we travel everywhere.
Nice.
Yeah.
And people can request whatever sort of meal they want, or like whatever themed food they want.
Oh yes. So every single menu we customize. It's curated specifically for the client. Even at our supper clubs, I guess today, like I've made chicken and waffles, we've done shrimp and grits, but I haven't done this exact menu. And then that was one of the things that was important to me because I used every one of these supper clubs that we did is kind of like not just our test kitchen, but it's also like a focus group. So I changed every single menu. We never repeated the exact same menu just to keep it unique in that way, but also see what are the effects? Like, how do people respond differently to different food? Does food react differently with cannabinoids? You know, are there things? And one thing that I found was like red wine and beer definitely for me and in my world aren't good. Like, so I use alcohol jokingly as a gateway drug because alcohol is like an immediate sensation. We used to get a lot of people. It's like, when am I going to feel this? What's going to happen? When am I going to happen? Oh my God. All right, here, have a drink. Calm down. Right. So we would do an infused cocktail as the toast, but it would only be 1 ounce of alcohol and they'd get a second one around the main course. So it'd only be 2 ounces of alcohol the course. And we would like really regulate it. But as of late, like yesterday, we did Arnold Palmer. So there was no alcohol. But if people request it, we're fine. I think there's a very fine line, though, with alcohol and cannabis.
Yeah, it's a bit of a dangerous mix.
Yeah, it's like you're good until you're not.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, just take it easy, gently does it. Yeah, go low, go slow.
Yeah.
Well, the meals that you're making sound amazing. Hopefully you'll have one somewhere near the Northeast at some point soon that I'll be able to come out and try.
You gotta come down to New York. You're not that far.
I know it. One last question before I let you go. What is your favorite meal that you have ever made infused?
My witty remark to that is always the next one I make.
That's
right. Good. But I will say I just did a dinner in January for a friend, my homie Michael Ang. He happens to be Filipino, and I'm Filipino as well. My father's born in the Philippines. And we did a whole Filipino menu. So that for me, it was kind of like a coming out thing for me. I don't really talk about it because I try not to get too like political in everything. But when Prohibition started in this country, they named Blacks, Mexicans, and Filipinos in that. And, you know, when we talk about now in modern times, it's usually a very much black or white thing, you know, when they talk about cannabis and things like that and disparities and things of that nature. And kind of wanted to start talking about that a lot more. So getting to do a dinner and showcase the history, the heritage, and kind of what we do was like, it was very fun for me.
I love that, using food to teach as well.
Oh,
that's
always.
Awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you, Brit.
A huge thanks to today's guest, Chef Hawaii Mike Salman. You can read more about Chef for Hire and his Infused Supper Club on page 54 in the latest issue of Different Leaf, the magazine. Available now to buy at differentleaf.com and on thousands of shelves across the US. Go to differentleaf.com and find the subscribe and shop tab to find your local in-person retailer. Next week, we'll be talking about the place of hemp in high fashion with designer and Project Runway finalist Kato Momalu.
We talked about just wearing things that maybe supported, you know, the cannabis industry for these executives that didn't just want to wear the usual golf shirt with, you know, the logo right here that you get randomly made. Like, who wants to look like that? Why can't I wear this beautiful athleisure hoodie with matching outfit to go to the gym, but representing what I make my money on? You know, on the back, this big cannabis leaf and gold glitter and saying, yes, women grow.
Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you're listening right now so you don't miss the next episode. Follow us on social media at Different Leaf, and I'm on social media at Brit the British. Make sure you've got your spring cultural issue of Different Leaf, the magazine, out now at select retailers and available at differentleaf.com.